to you all. Thank you once again for joining. We're looking forward to the discussion today, focused on the future of e-commerce and retailing, and especially looking at the great work Amazon is doing. Our guest speaker will share more details on Amazon's initiatives and their role in shaping the future. After that, we will have a few students from India and Malaysia also delivering their input and sharing their insights. I would just encourage everyone to please stay on mute during the presentation so that we can have no disruptions on that. I would now like to welcome and thank Paul Meisner from Amazon.com. Paul is the Vice President for Global Innovation Policy and Communications. He's an Amazon VP for over 21 years. Paul remains passionate about Amazon's history, culture, and methods of sustained customer-obsessed innovation, especially in the context of Amazon's leadership principles. He frequently describes the company to external audiences and newer colleagues worldwide. The founder of Amazon's global public policy organization, Paul has led the team and served as the company's Vice President for Global Public Policy from February 2000 to May 2016. Paul has testified before the United States Congress over 30 times and many dozens of times before other policy-making bodies around the world. Paul is both an engineer, scientist, as well as an attorney. Since 1993, he has been a member of the Bar of the District of Columbia. He is also an innovator named in 3 patents. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul. We are honored to have you here and looking forward to your insightful discussions. Over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gert. The first question always is, can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks everyone for joining. I hope you all are keeping very safe and well. We are, of course, thinking about our colleagues and friends in hotspots around the world, especially India and Brazil these days. So I hope we will be able to meet with our friends and colleagues again very soon. We get through this. One of the things I've frequently advised other companies about is the need to continuously innovate, to do it continually, and not just wait until the last moment to innovate. The idea is this, that a lot of very successful enterprises, both private sector and public sector, find themselves being successful for a great idea or a great service or a great product that they provide to their customers. And then something will change. Perhaps a new invention is made, another competitor enters the market, or consumer needs and desires just change. And so suddenly they find themselves with an outdated product or service, and they need to quickly innovate. They need to act fast so they can now serve their customers despite this change. Well, the chances of that being successful are actually pretty small. If you wait until the last minute to try to innovate, try to do something new for your customers, you'll find that innovation is extremely difficult and unlikely to succeed. So I constantly advise individuals as well as organizations like schools or companies or governments to always be trying new things, always trying to innovate, always experiment, because so many of those experiments will fail. Amazon is well known for its many failures, and I can tell you about a lot of failures that occurred that nobody even knows about externally. But that's because we're always trying new things, and we're willing to fail. Now, no one saw COVID coming. We didn't see COVID coming. We weren't prepared for it. No one was. We were like everyone else. And so we needed to innovate very quickly in a way that we had not anticipated. Now, the company has spent a quarter of a century innovating on behalf of our workforce around safety. But the safety always was with respect to large boxes or conveyor belts or forklifts. It was never with respect to a virus. And so suddenly we needed to figure out how to operate our facilities with COVID surrounding us in all the geographies in which we operate. So we quickly had to innovate, and we did, but it also involved a large expenditure of money. Within just a few short months, we spent something like $800 million on safety measures. That was just internal safety measures. And then the expenditures to ramp up to meet consumer demand was also pretty great. I think the number is something like $4 or $5 billion, billion with a B. But we were happy to do it. We needed to do it just to simply address the challenge that COVID posed to us. And so it was a good lesson to us to remain humble, as we always try to be, to recognize that we didn't see this coming and that we needed to fix it and act very quickly. Now, it was gratifying to be in a good position with respect to consumers, because before we had emphasized providing selection and low prices and convenience to consumers, but suddenly we were often the only provider of some essential goods and products to our consumers. And so by being able to serve customers in that way, it was particularly gratifying. Now, a lot of what Gert wanted me to talk about, and the organizers and I have discussed, is the future of retail. That where are things going for Amazon as a company? Where is it going for retail more generally? And I'm happy to talk about that. But we all have to remember that future is always contingent. There's no certainty in the future. And so this is often a good lesson for students of history when they're looking back at what has happened over the past decade or century or millennia. It seems certain to us now that things were going to work out the way they did, but they weren't at all certain to the people who were living in those times. And so likewise, when we look ahead, we have to be very humble about trying to guess what's going to happen. Now, I think one thing is fairly certain in retail, and that is that it's a really, really good time to be a consumer. Consumers now are in charge of retail in a way that they just never have been in all of history. You look back, and the very earliest traders among people were operating in very limited geographies, and the selection of what you could trade for was extremely.
Sorry, Paul, you're on mute.
I didn't do that, so there's a gremlin. But in any case, yeah. So the idea is this: that history appears to us to be certain when we look backwards, but when we look forwards into the future, it's all contingent. And so it's your generation more than mine that will determine how retail evolves in the coming years. I'm sort of fading. I'm an older person, and retirement is not too far away, and so it really is your generation who will determine whether the retail shifts in one direction or another. It's up to companies like Amazon and others to try to keep up, to try to figure out what consumers want, especially given that the choices available now to consumers are so easy for consumers to make that the companies will need to respond to what consumers ultimately like. Now, it is true that even 25 years ago, well within my adult lifetime, your choices of where you wanted to shop were governed by where you lived. So if there was a local store, you needed to go to that local store and you had no other choice. Or maybe you had two choices if you were willing to travel some distance, or three choices. If you were very lucky and lived in a big city, you might have multiple choices. But you found very quickly that the choices among places to buy things were hampered by the fact that they were all selling the same products. And so there wasn't a lot of variety or selection available to consumers. Well, that's been radically changed in the past quarter century, to the point now where the selection of a company like Amazon, we carry hundreds of millions of different items. I mean, not individual pieces, obviously, billions of individual pieces, but different products, number in the hundreds of millions. And of course, there are other sellers online as well. In fact, it turns out that well over half the things sold through Amazon are not sold by Amazon. They're sold by somebody else. And that's approaching 60% of the things that are sold through Amazon are not sold by us. So it's an exciting time to be a consumer because there is this choice. And it's also a little scary to be in the retail business simply because you know that it's very easy for consumers to go somewhere else. They They can just, with the click of a mouse, they don't have to travel anywhere. They don't have to be, living in a city. They can just click their mouse and choose another service provider if their current service provider is not serving them well. So it keeps us humble. It keeps us operating very quickly. Now, we have a process within Amazon that sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's called working backwards. Working backwards. And the whole idea is we envision a product or service that we want to provide to our customers sometime in the future. So maybe it's 6 months from now, maybe it's 4 or 5 years from now, but we envision what we want to do for them. We write down how we would describe the new product or service to our customers. And then from that description, that written description, we work backwards to today to figure out all the things that we need to invent. And so it's humbling in many ways. One is you have to be able to describe what you want to do in customer terms. So you're not talking about some new widget or some new invention. You're actually talking about what's in it for the customer. Second, you're writing it down. So this is a big commitment within Amazon when we write out one of these ideas, because it's not like you write it out and then you keep changing it all the time. Then the purpose of writing it out is lost. By writing it, however, in the terms of what a consumer would read or hear in a news report, however, we're not saying how we're going to do it. We need to figure out how to do it. We're describing what it is, what's in it for the customer. And so it's particularly humbling because we recognize that when we're planning months and years ahead like this, that the things that we need to do to provide that product or service to our customers haven't been invented yet. So we actually know that we need to invent something that no one has invented. And that can be a little scary, but it's all for the purpose of serving our customers. So it is that relentless focus on our customers. Now, there are many different ways to operate a retail business. Some retail businesses are extremely successful by what is called in the industry fast following, and that is to say, they look around to see what their competitors are doing and quickly do it as well and try to do it a little better. And so that kind of an approach is successful for many retailers. It's just not our approach. We've chosen not to do that, and so we pay very little attention to our competitors. We're aware that they're out there, and they're working hard too, but we're not focused on them because we figure that if we're focused on our competitors, then we'll always be a step behind, and we'll be thinking about what they're thinking as opposed to what our customers are thinking. So we'd much rather focus on them. It's a really liberating idea. Now, it turns out that investors traditionally like to lump companies together. So they'll have a set of competitors that they all lump together and they analyze them as an industry or a sub-industry. But that's the investment community. We don't think that way. We don't think about, well, who are our competitors and how will we fit in? That doesn't matter to us. What we would much rather focus on is what our customers are doing. Now, when Amazon or any company has a particularly good set of financial results, so like a quarterly report or an annual report that's really good, oftentimes the newspapers will report on that as like, well, they did something really great this year, or this quarter they really operated very well. Well, as it turns out, especially for bigger companies, the decisions that affect quarterly results were made 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't what happened this quarter. It was what we did a long time ago, making choices, making investments, decisions. And those kinds of decisions just take a long time to percolate through the system because we're working on those kinds of innovations, those inventions that take some time. And so the next time you read a story about a company that had a very good quarter or a very bad quarter, remember that that really happened as a result of decisions made a long time ago, often years ago. And so that's another reason why focusing on competitors just doesn't make sense. Because if a competitor comes out with a new product or service that looks really great, well, they've been working on it for a long time, and so automatically you're years behind if the first time you learn about it is from your competitor's announcement. So it's just not a good idea. Now, the notion of disruption is one that I hear a lot about, where a company will be described as being a disruptive company, or they had a disruptive invention, and that adjective is often applied to Amazon. And I think it's a little gratifying to be thought of that way, but it's wholly inaccurate. No company can set out to be disruptive, because whether they like it or not, they don't get to choose what invention is disruptive, what company is disruptive. It's consumers who choose this, right? Because it's only if consumers somehow alter their behavior, their buying patterns, or how they do things, it's only then that there is a disruption. And so ultimately, it's not up to a company to be disruptive. It's up to consumers to be whether the product or service that they're offering is disruptive. And so we've had some failures over the years. As I mentioned earlier, most of those failures are ones that never got out to customers, right? So we just tried something, we experimented with something, and it just didn't work. Jeff personally takes credit for something like billions of dollars worth of failures, and I'm sure he's right. I mean, that may be a lowball number. I mean, he as the leader of this company for a quarter century, he was involved in a lot of decisions. Some were failures. They were experiments that did not work. And of course, he's also been the leader of the company through the experiments that did work. And so the ones that worked that surprised a lot of external people include things like Amazon Web Services. This is our cloud computing business. And you got to think that back in, not long after I joined the company, so I joined in 2000, late 99, and a few years later, we were running up against a problem inside of Amazon. And the problem was this: we had lots of very smart people in different parts of the company working on new products and services that they wanted to develop for our customers. But every single team had its own set of software development engineers. Every single team had to write code to do like calls to databases or run through our payment system, things like this, very highly repetitive activities. And it was completely inefficient to do it this way, to have that all distributed throughout our company. And so we set out to figure out a way to standardize some of the basic tools within Amazon. At the same time, we were talking to other companies, and there were other retailers, other companies in our core line of business, which was retail, and they were having the same kind of problems. They had software development engineers spread all throughout their company, many of them doing basically the same things. And we said, well, let's try to fix this thing for our own company, our core business, our retail business, but at the same time, maybe we should make it available to third parties. And that was the birth of Amazon Web Services back in 2005 and 2006 timeframe. And it's interesting because the way the investment community viewed that move was like, why is Amazon doing this? It's a retail business. Why would they do this cloud thing? And not only were they kind of questioning this, but very assertively, people were saying, well, we're not calling on Amazon to invent cloud computing. I mean, they should be selling us books and maybe some other things too. And so we thought, well, that's one way to look at it, but we see a real need out there. There are potential customers out there who could benefit from the kinds of services that we're figuring out how to provide within our own company. And so it turns out to be a pattern at Amazon. If you want to sort of predict what Amazon will be doing in the future, one way to do it is to think about what skills Amazon has developed for its current line of businesses, and then will Amazon be in a position to make those skills available as a service to other parties? And we've done this repeatedly throughout our history. Well, the example I cited earlier, our marketplace. So when our company was formed, We were simply a traditional retailer. There really wasn't much to distinguish us from every other retailer that had been around for a long time, except that all the shopping and payments and delivery was done remotely. So there weren't any physical stores, and that was the difference. Otherwise, we were behaving just like a retailer. We would buy stuff at wholesale, put it in warehouses, and then sell it off at retail. Again, the only difference being that it was done online. Well, once we got good at that, or at least passively good at it, we thought, well, why not allow third parties to sell through the Amazon website and use our services, use our website, use our payment processing, and eventually use our warehouses? Well, Wall Street and the investment community hated this idea. They thought it was a terrible idea. What they said was, you're a retailer and you're allowing other retailers to come onto your website and sell alongside you? That doesn't make any sense. You don't see that anywhere in the physical world. You can't go into a high street shop and sell your goods alongside the goods the high street shop is selling. It doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. Well, we had a different view of it. We said, well, it'll give our buyer customers more selection from which to choose. It will cause price competition right on our website, so our buyer customers can look at the prices and compare them and take the lower price one. And it will introduce a new type of customer into the Amazon family. And this is, of course, the seller customer. And as I said before, this has been wildly successful. These sellers now sell more than Amazon sells through Amazon's websites. And so that's pretty cool. And it did work out. Now, there's a reason why I have an iPhone. I have an iPhone because Amazon's phone didn't really work. If you don't remember it, maybe that's a good thing. But in 2014, we launched a product called the Fire Phone, and we thought it was pretty cool. It had some cool little innovations in it, one of which where you can sort of walk around or you move your head around the device and you got a 3D effect. I mean, there are cool things like that. Well, it turned out that customers didn't like it. And so much so that we ended up canceling it within just months. I think it was 8 months, something like that. And it cost us something like $170 million of a write down on that business, which of course was painful. But far more painful than the monetary loss was the fact that that phone got out to our customers, right? If it was going to fail, we really should have tested it so much that it failed in-house before it went out. And it's not because we're embarrassed about failure. I'm telling you about failure all the time. I mean, we frequently fail. But the problem was our customers trusted us to give them a good product, and they turned out not to like it. We thought it was cool. They didn't. And so that one was very painful. Now, there's a good news story that the team that worked on the Fire Phone went off to develop the Echo line of products that feature the Alexa digital assistant. And so there ultimately was a product. I am not doing that, but somehow it's magically turning off on me. Maybe when I mention the voice assistant, I don't know. The reality is, though, that failure is a part of innovation. In fact, you cannot try something truly new and innovative and expect it to work every time. Because if you know it's going to work, it can't be new, or you're the smartest person in the world. I mean, the fact of the matter is innovation relies on experimentation. And experiments in business, just like experiments in science, must be able to fail, or they're not actually experiments. So when we try to maintain our culture over long periods of time, we have to work at it. And part of the reason you need to work at it, of course, at a company like Amazon, is just our scale. We've gotten pretty big, and so I have whatever it is, 1.3 million colleagues now around the world, and so that's a lot of people. And to maintain the same entrepreneurial culture of the startup from 25 years ago takes work. And so one of the things I feel pretty strongly about inside of Amazon is that we really need to remind people about how our culture works. The cool thing is that, first of all, the culture is based on a set of written principles. And you can actually find these on any of our websites. We call them the leadership principles, but it's a bit misleading in the sense that these are applied to all 1.3 million of us, not just to the leaders of the company. And so these are the principles by which we operate the company. They affect our decision-making day to day, and they help us maintain this culture. One of the nice things about these principles is we've never claimed that these are the only possible successful principles, and we don't even claim that they're the best ones. They just happen to be Amazon's. So it's not religion. We're not saying that this is the way it has to be done, and this is it's just this is the way we do things in Amazon. That's all it is. And there are 14 of these. I do encourage you to look through them. They're kind of interesting, even because there is a little bit of detail provided on the websites to these things. But of the 14, the one that stands above all the others, all the other 13, is called customer obsession. And it really goes back to that notion that we don't think about competitors. We're not worried about them. We only think about our customers. And if you wake up every morning trying to figure out a better way to provide products and services to customers, it really is. It's a focusing mechanism that ensures that what you do day in and day out is going to ultimately be best for them. We actually had in the early days in Amazon, when we had a lot of our early meetings, what we would do is we would often have a conference table around which we were seated, and we would leave one chair empty. And we would just imagine during the course of a meeting that a customer was sitting there in that chair and just listening to what we were talking about. And you can imagine a couple different reactions. Let's say the customer is sitting there and she listens to us talk about how we want to raise prices on something and how we want to get a higher profit on something. She's going to hate that. It's going to be really embarrassing. She doesn't want to hear that. She wants to hear how we're going to do things better for her, how we're going to try to drive prices down, not raise them, how we try to provide better service for less money. And with that in mind, it really helps remind you that this is we're not in this company to be the company. We're in this company to be serving customers. And so everything else in the leadership principles sort of revolve around that. One of the other leadership principles, if you have a chance to look at these, is called R-Right a lot. A-R-E-R-I-G-H-T, comma, a lot, A-L-O-T, right? So if you think about this, it's kind of odd that a company would want to be right a lot. As individuals, and presumably as a collection of individuals, we want to be right all the time. But the point is, you can't be right all the time if you're experimenting and innovating. So you need to be able to experiment and fail, that is to be wrong, many times to actually get to successful experiments. Now, the reason this works over long periods of time is because a lot of failures can be paid for by just a few big successes. So things like Marketplace, Amazon Web Services, Amazon Prime, these are all experiments that worked out really well. Our customers loved them, and so they turned out to be important to our customers, and so they became successful for our company. But those kinds of few successes pay for a lot of failures. And the reason this works is because business is very unlike sport. If there's a football match between, say, a professional soccer club and a youth team of 4- and 5-year-olds, who's going to win? Well, the professional soccer club will win, and the score might be 30-0 or something like that. But what does the professional soccer team get out of it? They get one victory, just one, even though they won overwhelmingly. Well, that's not how it works in business. If you succeed at something in business, there's no upper cap on that success. You can have one victory, or you can have 10 or 10,000. There is no upper cap to success, and as a result, those uncapped successes, just a few of them here and there, will pay for all the other failures easily. The trick is you have to continually be doing this. And so I started off by talking about our experience during COVID and how we needed to suddenly innovate in an area where we hadn't before. It was a really helpful reminder why we always do innovate consistently, constantly, so that we can address the failures and move on to those uncapped successes. It also, I think, was, and this is a bit more subjective, but I think that the fact that we're so used to innovating, it's just we're accustomed to it, that it was easier for us to recognize what COVID was and just do what we always do, which is to experiment and innovate and try to fix things. And so a lot of the safety precautions we developed for our workers were developed in that kind of environment. We know we have to do something. We know we can do this because we do this all the time. So let's figure it out. And so we were able to transform our safety conscious environment that had been built around physical products, boxes, to one that also took into account virus protection. And that happened fairly easily for us because we're just accustomed to it. So I guess the lesson for other enterprises would be that innovate all the time, experiment all the time. Lots of failures will be paid for by just a few big successes. And I'm happy, Gert, to leave it at that and take any questions that you and your colleagues may have.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. That was really interesting. I personally have a few questions, but I think I would give it over to the students first to provide their input. We have Anika Singh. Are you online, Anika?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so sir, before beginning, I would like to first show you people a small presentation. 1 minute, just. Sir, is the presentation visible?
Yes, it is now.
Okay, so as we all know, the topic is e-commerce, which we are today discussing about, which in a way means electronic commerce. 1 minute. There's an issue coming. So next we have, what is e-commerce? Some of you must be thinking. So e-commerce or electronic commerce refers to transactions conducted via the internet. Every time individuals and companies are buying or selling products and services online, they are engaging in e-commerce. The term e-commerce also encompasses other activities, including online auctions, internet banking, payment gateways, and online ticketing. In a way, it means the whole marketing we are getting done through internet. Types of e-commerce: business to business directly, business to the consumer, consumer to consumer, and consumer to business. Usage of e-commerce. Why is it useful? It is useful just because it is in a way low cost, because they give directly to us. Flexibility and speed speeds up the buying process. Wide range of products and services, educate information, accessibility and easiness, lots of choices. E-commerce risk. There are several risks which are there in e-commerce which we should be aware of, which are like stolen credentials or passwords, dishonest merchants, disputes over transaction, inappropriate use of transaction details, merchants' risk. Then we have risk management in e-commerce. How can we manage the risks which are there in e-commerce? By ensuring information security, create and display effective policies, use collection efforts to minimize losses, and select the right acquiring bank and merchant services provider. Understand the risk and train yourself to be aware of. We also have the brief history of e-commerce, how it was started, how do we have it now. So history of e-commerce started over 40 years ago when the introduction of early technology like electronic data interchange, EDI, and teleshopping in the 1970s paved the way for the modern day e-commerce store. As we know it today, the history of e-commerce includes the aspect of open source commerce, as it can be used freely by an array of people. In this regard, the late 1970s saw the development prior to anything as resembling internet commerce of methods for businesses to process this transaction with each other using electronic means. We also have need for innovation. Why do we need innovation in e-commerce? E-commerce is the holy grail of retail, hitting sales of up to 3 trillion US dollars worldwide. Since its conception 20 years ago, e-commerce has evolved to create a seamless shopping experience while meeting the changing needs of consumers anywhere, anytime. Traditional e-commerce has stayed largely stagnant for the past 20 years. Now, shoppers are turning to digital more than ever as the retail landscape is in a state of rapid change. From store closures to precautions and fears amid reopening to a shift to e-commerce. Then we also have famous e-commerce brands, which are, as we all know, Amazon, which is the king of e-commerce, Jingdong, Chinese e-commerce with the cutest logo, Alibaba Group Holding Limited, Chinese e-commerce dragon, eBay, the e-commerce company that once sold a whole town, Rakuten, Japanese e-commerce Godzilla, B2W, Compania Digital, Zalando. We also have the top e-commerce brands, which are Amazon, Alibaba. So first I would like to tell you people something about Amazon. Amazon is an American multinational technology company based in Seattle, Washington, which focuses on e-commerce, cloud computing, digital streaming, and artificial intelligence. It was founded on 5th July 1994 by Jeff Bezos. It is one of the big five companies in the US info technology industry, along with Google, Apple, Microsoft.
You went on mute there, sorry. Annika?
Anika, sorry, you're on mute. We are unable to hear you.
It's maybe done.
Yes,
So
you're back.
now am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So next we have several international sites, online marketplace, specialty stores, ticketing, deal sites. These are some of the sites which we usually use. Important facts about e-commerce. E-commerce actually started in 1979. Netflix was not the first online DVD subscription retailer. As of the third quarter in 2012, $4,423 in transactions occurred through PayPal per second. 47% of shoppers say that Facebook has the greatest impact on what they buy. By the year 2040, it's estimated that 95% of all purchases will be through e-commerce. The biggest e-commerce store now is Amazon. Second is eBay, followed by Amazon, Walmart, and Home Depot. Pizza Hut was the first pizza chain to offer online ordering in 1994. Polivore has the largest average order value, maintaining 66.75 per order. Next, thank you. And now I would like to just give a small speech. 1 minute, I just begin the speech. Okay, so if you do build a great experience, so am I visible?
Not visible now.
Oh.
You're not visible, but we are able to hear you. You're audible, Anika, so you can go on.
Okay. If you do build a great experience, customers tell each other about that. Word of mouth is very powerful. Said by Jeff Bezos, who who's the founder of renowned company, namely Amazon. With this wonderful quote, I, Anika Singh of Class 10 from Bharatiya Vidyaniketan, Gwalior, India, would like to wish you all a very warm good evening. As of today, all of us have gathered here on this online platform to have a very astonishing discussion on one of the predominant topic, that is e-commerce. What e-commerce is, some of you must be wondering. So e-commerce is a popular name for electronic commerce, which is maintaining relationships and conducting business transactions that include selling information, services, and goods utilizing computer telecommunications network. Although in the vernacular, e-commerce usually refers only to the trading of goods and services over the internet. E-commerce consists of business to consumer and business to business commerce, as well as internal organizational transactions that support such activities. The resulting computer to computer electronic data interchange (EDI) standard is flexible enough to handle some simple electronic business transactions. Also, there are several risks during all this which we usually don't care about. Some of them are as follows: online security, system reliability, privacy issues, customer disputes, credit card fraud, intellectual property issues, website trafficking, return of goods, and warranty, along with warehousing and logistic issues. Why is e-commerce such an important part of today's world? Simply because the world is moving more and more into the digital realm every day. According to marketing research firm Coleman Parks, 21 to 40% of a business contribution are a direct result of e-commerce, and that number is expected to grow rapidly over the coming years. With the growing impact of the digital community affecting the way this business is done now, we must use an e-commerce platform for day-to-day usage as it is too advantageous of easy global reach. It round the check working. That means it is open 24/7. Production of customized products and services, low cost of acquiring, serving and retaining customers, easy connections, it is simple and fast, offers online services, also it is near the reach. According to economists, the need for innovation arises only once you reach the productivity frontier. And reaching the productivity frontier just involves imitating the best practices of others. Change comes quickly in the online world, and companies that move quickly to access these changes underway and adjust their business models to meet shifting market dynamics and customer demands can establish significant leads over both traditional competitors and new entrants. So thank you all. Thank you all for paying attention towards me. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika. That was good. Thank you. Thank you for some interesting stats you shared there as well. I think this also shows us that how important innovation is. If you were saying that e-commerce has been around for 40 years, but only recently has really stepped up and really become an important part. But like Paul mentioned as well, the innovation is continuously, and maybe something you did a few years ago only pays off now. So do you have any comments on that, Paul?
Yes, Gert, thank you. Anika, thank you so much. That was a really useful summary of the state of e-commerce and its history. I think one of the most interesting statistics is somewhat surprising to people these days, and that is that e-commerce remains such a very small part of retail. In the United States, which may be the oldest e-commerce market, e-commerce remains only about 12 or 13% of retail. And most countries around the world are in single-digit percents. There are just a few exceptions that get into double digits. And so what this means, of course, is that well over 80 or even 90% of retail is still offline. It is not e-commerce. And so the opportunities for growth in this space are enormous. And so you and your colleagues will be part of this, Anika.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you. And then next up we have Kushagra Shukla from India. Are you online?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
So, am I visible and audible?
You're audible, but soft, not visible.
Okay, so there must be some problem with my camera. So, may I continue?
Okay, but we can hear you fine.
Okay. So, hi everyone. I am Kushagra from Bhartiyam Vidyaniketan, Gwalior, India. Today, I am going to share my thoughts on e-commerce. E-commerce refers to electronically buying or selling of products on online services or over the internet. The term was coined by Dr. Robert Jacobson. E-commerce is in turn driven by the technological advances of the semiconductor industry and is the largest sector of the electronics industry. It includes online transactions, internet marketing, electronic funds transfer, supply chain management, etc. Now we come to the types of e-commerce. B2B e-commerce, short term for business to business electric commerce, is the sale of goods or services between businesses via an online sale portal. DTC. DTC refers to selling products directly to customers, bypassing any third-party retailers, wholesalers, or any other middlemen. Digital wallet. A digital wallet, also known as e-wallet, is an online service or software program that allows one party to make electronic transactions with another party, bartering digital currency units for goods and service. Group buying, also known as collective buying, offers products and services at significantly reduced prices on the condition that a minimum number of buyers would make the purchase. Online banking, also known as internet banking, web banking, or home banking, is an electronic payment system that enables customers of a bank or other financial institutions to conduct a range of financial transactions through the financial institution's website. In India, the Information Technology Act of 2000 governs the basic applicability of e-commerce. E-commerce during COVID-19. As we all know, in March 2020, global website traffic hit 14.3 billion visits, signifying an unprecedented growth of e-commerce during lockdown 2020. It has helped in humanless, cashless transactions with zero contact. Its sales are expected to reach $6.5 trillion by 2023. The rise of COVID-19 has forced growth and development of the e-commerce industry. It is a safe and secure way that also protects the environment. All that we need to do is be knowledgeable about e-commerce and use it safely. The famous e-commerce companies are Amazon, Brainbees, Flipkart, Nykaa e-Retail, IndiaMart, Intermesh, and Just Dial. E-commerce is very different from traditional commerce, as traditional commerce includes direct interaction between buyer and seller, whereas an indirect interaction through internet takes place in case of e-commerce. Drawbacks of e-commerce. Security is the biggest drawback of e-commerce. People fear to provide personal information. Many websites do not have encryption or do not use encrypted codes. Thus, lack of privacy becomes a big issue. Some products may be available and others may not be. Thus, availability becomes an issue. But all these drawbacks can be combated with programmers and owners of the companies and can be solved. It is emerging as a new way to overcome our problems during this pandemic, so we shall give it some time to be more safe and secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Kushagra. Well done. That was a good speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any comments on that, Paul? Comments or questions?
Just a very quick one. Kushagra, I agree that security is has always been a challenge because consumers are reluctant to share information with organizations where people that they can't see. And that was a new thing. And it was something that we needed to overcome at Amazon back in the late 90s. And we always recognized that maintaining customer trust was first and foremost, because if you lose that customer trust, they won't want to shop with you. And so we've taken security extremely seriously right from the very beginning for exactly the reasons you say. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. And exactly, like if I can add to that, like you mentioned as well, working backwards, I'm sure you looked at the security in advance that customers would need to feel secured and have that security already covered. So then working back to implement that and make sure that security is not an issue. Great.
Yes, sir.
Then last but not least, we would like to welcome Zen from Malaysia.
Hi.
There you go. Hi.
Hi.
Over to you, Zen.
Hi. So as the topic is actually e-commerce, so basically, e-commerce is actually something really popular nowadays in this pandemic, and it's actually treated as a solution for the majority of people. And because of this pandemic, and that's how e-commerce managed to become a success. So during this time, like Amazon's, eBay's and many other e-commerce things, they managed to sell off and they make good profits of it. So due to the pandemic, and a lot of people can't really go out to get their things or going to any shop to buy their stuff. So that's why in the world we have e-commerce as a new way of doing marketing as an online marketing, and treats as a solution. So probably in most of the countries, most of the United States, Malaysia, or anywhere else, e-commerce is going, and most of the students are thinking of doing an online business for it. So because of the new popularity of e-commerce, we actually wish to make something good and better for the whole nation and the world. That's about it.
Great, thank you, Zen. That's a good point. It actually makes me want to ask you, Paul, from like you were mentioning that this generation of students, they would be the ones that shape the future of e-commerce. And like Zen mentioned, so students trying to start online shops, is there any like a bit of advice that you would give to students looking at starting online shops? How would you go about that, and starting small to grow it, or what is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you, Gert, and thank you, Zen, for your remarks. I strongly believe that this generation, represented by you on the call, will have many more opportunities than my generation had for advancement. And part of the reason for that is that the pace of technology will only accelerate. It will get faster and faster in the coming decades. We've seen a lot of change over the past 25 years, but I think the change in the next 25 years will dwarf the earlier change. And much of the reason why is the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning to old human problems. I mean, we humans have been around for a long time, and we've been addressing some of the same challenges, like for agriculture, growing enough food to feed us all. It's a huge challenge, but now we have tools that weren't available even 10 or 15 years ago for machine learning. And so these tools will allow industries like agriculture to improve in ways that we can't foresee. And so when your generation gets involved with e-commerce, you will have tools at your disposal that will allow you to do things much better than Amazon has done to date. It just, you have abilities that we didn't have. in the early days of Amazon, we actually had to develop our own machine learning tools because they weren't available anywhere else. One of them was a very primitive one called collaborative filtering, and that basically drives the recommendations engine at Amazon. So if you buy a product or if you look at a few products online, we'll also be able to make recommendations based on your purchase or your viewing. And our customers love that. I mean, that's a very important part of the Amazon experience. But it was really an early version of machine learning that allowed that to work. And so you will have far more tools, and in fact, you already do have far more tools available to you. And so my recommendation to you is twofold. One, really focus ultimately on the human dimension. I mean, serving people is what businesses should be doing. And so don't just invent things for the sake of inventing. Figure out a way that they are useful to people, and that you will be successful. And the other is use the tools that are now available. And those tools will accelerate the invention and innovation that occurs over the next 10 years. And I think all of you can be a big part of that.
So of course, so all of us will actually like to thank you for giving us the idea, the inspiration, so that we can actually make a change to the future. So as nothing lasts forever, right? So there's always a time that something new rise up, and eventually the cycle goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Thank you, Zen and Paul. I would like to actually ask a question that ties in with that. So, especially for the young upcoming generation who wants to innovate and start something like this, you were talking about your failures a lot. So, like Amazon's failures. Is there something specific that you can highlight to us all, which was a failure maybe, but then changed something or approached slightly different that then made it into a success?
Yes, and I think I gave the example earlier of the Amazon Fire Phone, which was a failure, but ultimately led to the success of the Echo line of products, which featured the Alexa digital assistant. And so that's an example of that. But I think too often we focus on the opportunities to improve after a failure, and then it ultimately becomes a success. I'm not sure that's exactly the best way to view failure in experimentation. Failure when you're experimenting and innovating is just part of the process. And some of the failures do go nowhere. They don't lead to anything that is good, but you have to try these. You have to experiment and be willing to fail, because ultimately there's going to be a different thing that does succeed. So it's not as if every failure leads to a success. That's not true. But if you are willing to fail all the time, you're trying new things all the time, then something will succeed. And that's, I think, the bigger lesson. So it's more the process and the willingness to fail that is so crucial to innovation.
Yes, exactly. I know, like, obviously, entrepreneurs in general are scared of starting something because of the failure, but actually failure is good. Like, we should see it as something good to fail and then move on and to innovate again, change it a bit, or then this doesn't work at all and you can move on from that. So it's also, again, comes back to constantly innovating. If you see that you have the skills to do it slightly different or to innovate on a different field, and only after failure that you can actually see that and then move on and then get to something that does succeed. And then if it wasn't for the failure, then obviously that wouldn't have happened. So that's good. Some lesson that we all can take from there. Also, you were talking about the leadership points that you have. Where can the students see that?
On any of our websites, just scroll down on the home page, the landing page, And there will be a section that talks about Amazon, about the company. Some of it's there for investors, others for, say, the media, reporters, but our leadership principles can be found by just looking in the About Amazon sections of our websites. And I think they are worth a read. And again, we don't claim that these are the only or even the best set of principles by which to operate. They just happen to be the way we've done it. And, there have been some positive results that our customers like. And so we view them as useful in that sense.
Yes, okay. No, that's good. I think it would be interesting if our students can have a look at that, read through that, obviously gain some insights from your leadership principles. We have one question, time for one question. There's Christian. Christian, do you want to ask your question? There we have the question. So Christian asks, how can we create trust and awareness in the mind of the consumer that our e-commerce is genuine?
Yeah, it's a question that's a good question, Christian. It's one that we grappled with from the very early days, and part of it is actually delivering for your customers and the reputation that comes up around that. One of the reasons why consumers currently are comfortable using Amazon services is simply because we've taken it so seriously for a long period of time. And so we've built up over a period of time a level of trust that has been super important to our business. But it took a little bit of a leap of faith by our customers in those early days because we didn't have a history. So in the mid 90s, there was no history of Amazon, and now there's 25 years of it. And so just because it's human nature, it just takes time to build up trust between people and between a person and an enterprise like a company.
Thank you. I hope that answers Christian's question. Maybe we have time for one or two more. I see Sharma, you've got your hand raised. No? Okay, there was one other question on the chats from Roma. What is the best e-commerce company structure?
So it's a very appropriate question. I really like it because so many reporters and even investors who should be more sophisticated than this tend to think of e-commerce as monolithic, like there's only one style of e-commerce. And we saw from Anika's presentation the clumping of some companies together, and you've heard perhaps of the acronym called FANG, which I guess is Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google, and there are different variations of this. But the point that I like to make is to say that, well, you really need to look into their business models because these are radically different companies. They get lumped together sometimes, I guess, because they're technology-based, but what company isn't technology-based these days? But the business models are so different among those companies that it's hard to say which is best. I mean, Facebook has a really good one for a social media platform, but it's a very different business model than Amazon's. We like the decentralized structure of Amazon, but so completely focused on our company culture, including those leadership principles, so that every different part of Amazon's business operates the same way with the same goals of customer obsession. But even though they're doing very different things, we actually have a mechanism called the Two Pizza Team inside of Amazon. And the Two Pizza Team is basically an entrepreneurial group of about, say, 8 or 9 people who come together and behave as a startup inside of Amazon. So they go off and do something that they want to work on, and it operates, as I say, just like a small startup. And at any given time in Amazon, there are hundreds of these things, hundreds of Two Pizza Teams throughout the company. And sometimes what they work on will lead to an innovation or an invention or a new product or service that grows into something big. Other times, what they were trying didn't work, so the experiment failed. And so I think our particular structure of allowing small entrepreneurial teams to work together, even inside of a large corporate structure, that one preserves the startup mentality of Amazon despite the current scale.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I think last one, Anika, you wanted to ask something?
Yes, sir. So, sir, my question is like, how can we students, being kids, contribute to this e-commerce at this age?
So, Anika, thank you. And first of all, the very fact that you and your colleagues on this call have spent so much time researching e-commerce, talking about it, you're taking the time at inconvenient moments in your day to get on this call and discuss it, that's the first step. You're already thinking about it in a way that most teens around the world are not. And so congratulations to you. I think you've taken a big step by just thinking about it. Yeah, and then secondly, I would use the tools that are newly available. So frankly, if I were in my teens right now, I would spend the time to understand machine learning and the tools that are available. They're available from Amazon Web Services, but also from others, from Google, from Microsoft, and any number of providers of these kinds of tools. And it just will allow you to look at things in a way that wasn't even possible 15 or 20 years ago. And that's all time in front of you. I mean, Anika, you've got this wonderful career in front of you. Use these tools and your career will go even faster.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. I think that's really valuable coming from you, someone in your position already, to know what you would have done if you were a teen. So that's really interesting, and I hope everyone got that, and I hope everyone enjoyed the session today. I found it very insightful. I'm sure you all did as well. Thank you once again for joining us, Paul. It was really, really interesting.
Happy to do it. Thank you, and good luck to all of you.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you too, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We hope to have more seminars with you all. It's kind of interesting.